he reports to the man he got it from. Bring the man here. If it's a district messenger and he doesn't report, but goes straight back to the office, find out who gave him the note, get his description, then meet me at Delmonico's." Rumson called up that restaurant and had Wharton come to the phone. He asked his chief to wait until a letter he believed to be of great importance was delivered to him. He explained, but of necessity somewhat sketchily. "It sounds to me," commented his chief, "like a plot of yours to get a lunch uptown." "Invitation!" cried Rumson. "I'll be with you in 10 minutes." After Rumson had joined Wharton and Bissell, the note arrived. It was brought to the restaurant by a messenger boy, who said that in answer to a call from a saloon on 6th Avenue he had received it from a young man in ready-to-wear clothes and a green hat. When Hewitt, the detective, asked what the young man looked like, the boy said he looked like a young man in ready-to-wear clothes and a green hat. But when the note was read, the identity of the man who delivered it ceased to be of importance. The paper on which it was written was without stamped address or monogram, and carried with it the mixed odors of the drug-store at which it had been purchased. The handwriting was that of a woman, and what she had written was, "If the district attorney will come at once and alone to Kessler's Cafe on the Boston Post Road near the city line, he will be told who killed Herman Bempf. If he don't come in an hour, it will be too late. If he brings anybody with him, he won't be told anything. Leave your car in the road and walk up the drive. Ida Earle." Hewitt, who had sent away the messenger boy and had been called in to give expert advice, was enthusiastic. "Mr. District Attorney," he cried, "that's no crank letter. This Earle woman is wise. You got to take her as a serious proposition. She wouldn't make that play if she couldn't get away with it." "Who is she?" asked Wharton. To the police, the detective assured them, Ida Earle had been known for years. When she was young she had been under the protection of a man high in the ranks of Tammany, and, in consequence, with her different ventures the police had never interfered. She now was proprietress of the roadhouse in the note described as Kessler's Cafe. It was a place for joy-riders. There was a cabaret, a hall for public dancing, and rooms for very private suppers. In so far as it welcomed only those who could spend money, it was exclusive, but in all other respects its reputation was of the worst. In situation it was lonely, and from other houses separated by 1/4 of a mile of dying trees and vacant lots. The Boston Post Road upon which it faced was the old Post Road, but lately, through this backyard and dumping ground of the city, had been relaid. It was patrolled only and infrequently by bicycle policemen. "But this," continued the detective eagerly, "is where we win out. The roadhouse is an old farmhouse built over, with the barns changed into garages. They stand on the edge of a wood. It's about as big as a city block. If we come in through the woods from the rear, the garages will hide us. Nobody in the house can see us, but we won't be 100 yards away. You've only to blow a police whistle and we'll be with you." "You mean I ought to go?" said Wharton. Rumson exclaimed incredulously, "You gotta go!" "It looks to me," objected Bissell, "like a plot to get you there alone and rap you on the head." "Not with that note inviting him there," protested Hewitt, "and signed by Earle herself." "You don't know she signed it," objected the senator. "I know her," returned the detective. "I know she's no fool. It's her place, and she wouldn't let them pull off any rough stuff there. Not against the D.A. anyway." The D.A. was rereading the note. "Might this be it?" he asked. "Suppose it's a trick to mix me up in a scandal? You say the place is disreputable. Suppose they're planning to compromise me just before election. They've tried it already several times." "You've still got the note," persisted Hewitt. "It proves why you went there. And the senator, too. He can testify. And we won't be 100 yards away. And," he added grudgingly, "you have Nolan." Nolan was the spoiled child of the office. He was the district attorney's pet. Although still young, he had scored as a detective and as a driver of racing cars. As Wharton's chauffeur, he now doubled the parts. "What Nolan testified wouldn't be any help," said Wharton. "They would say it was just a story he invented to save me." "Then square yourself this way," urged Rumson. "Send a note now by hand to Ham Cutler and one to your sister. Tell them you're going to Ida Earle's and why. Tell them you're afraid it's a frame-up, and for them to keep your notes as evidence, and enclose the one from her." Wharton nodded in approval, and, while he wrote, Rumson and the detective planned how, without those inside the roadhouse being aware of their presence, They might be near it. Kessler's Cafe lay in the 79th Police Precinct. In taxicabs they arranged to start at once and proceed down White Plains Avenue, which parallels the Boston Road, until they were on a line with Kessler's, but from it hidden by the woods and the garages. A walk of a quarter of a mile across lots and under cover of the trees would bring them to within 100 yards of the house. Wharton was to give them the start of half an hour. That he might know they were on watch, they agreed, after they dismissed the taxicabs, to send one of them into the Boston Post Road past the roadhouse. When it was directly in front of the cafe, the chauffeur would throw away into the road an empty cigarette case. From the cigar stand they selected a cigarette box of a startling yellow. At half a mile it was conspicuous. "When you see this in the road," explained Rumson, "you'll know we're on the job. And after you're inside, if you need us, you've only to go to a rear window and wave." "If they mean to do him up," growled Bissell, "he won't get to a rear window." "He can always tell them we're outside," said Rumson, "and they are extremely likely to believe him. Do you want a gun?" "No," said the D.A. "Better have mine," urged Hewitt. "I have my own," explained the D.A. Rumson and Hewitt set off in taxicabs, and a half hour later Wharton followed. As he sank back against the cushions of the big touring car, he felt a pleasing thrill of excitement, and as he passed the traffic police and they saluted mechanically, he smiled. Had they guessed his errand, their interest in his progress would have been less perfunctory. In half an hour he might know that the police killed Banff. In half an hour he himself might walk into a trap they had in turn staged for him. As the car ran swiftly through the clean October air, and the wind and sun alternately chilled and warmed his blood, Wharton considered these possibilities. He could not believe the woman Earle would lend herself to any plot to do him bodily harm. She was a responsible person. In her own world, she was as important a figure as was the district attorney in his. Her allies were the men higher up in Tammany and the police of the upper ranks of the uniformed force. And of the higher office of the district attorney she possessed an intimate and respectful knowledge. It was not to be considered that against the prosecuting attorney such a woman would wage war. So the thought that upon his person any assault was meditated, Wharton dismissed as unintelligent. That it was upon his reputation the attack was planned seemed much more probable. But that contingency he had foreseen, and so, he believed, forestalled. There then remained only the possibility that the offer in the letter was genuine. It seemed quite too good to be true. For, as he asked himself, on the very eve of an election, why should Tammany, or a friend of Tammany, place in his possession the information that, to the Tammany candidate, would bring inevitable defeat? He felt that the way they were playing into his hands was too open, too generous. If their object was to lead him into a trap, of all baits they might use, the promise to tell him who killed Banff was the one certain to attract him. It made their invitation to walk into the parlor almost too obvious. But were the offer not genuine? There was a condition attached to it that puzzled him. It was not the condition that stipulated he should come alone. His experience had taught him many will confess or betray to the district attorney who, to a deputy, will tell nothing. The condition that puzzled him was the one that insisted he should come at once or it would be too late. Why was haste so imperative? Why, if he delayed, would he be too late? Was the man he sought about to escape from his jurisdiction? Was he dying, and was it his wish to make a deathbed confession? Or was he so reluctant to speak that delay might cause him to reconsider and remain silent? With these questions in his mind, the minutes quickly passed, and it was with the thrill of excitement Wharton saw that Nolan had left the Zoological Gardens on the right and turned into the Boston Road. It had but lately been completed, and to Wharton was unfamiliar. On either side of the unscarred roadway still lay scattered the uprooted trees and boulders that had blocked its progress, and abandoned by the contractors were empty tar barrels, cement sacks, tool sheds, and forges. Nor was the surrounding landscape less raw and unlovely. Toward the Sound stretched vacant lots covered with ash heaps. To the left a few old and broken houses set among the glass-covered cold frames of truck farms. The district attorney felt a sudden twinge of loneliness, and when an automobile sign told him he was 10 miles from Columbus Circle, he felt that from the New York he knew he was much farther. 2 miles up the road his car overhauled a bicycle policeman, and Wharton halted him. Is there a roadhouse called Kessler's beyond here?" he asked.